start or are we waiting?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
I've got you.
Oh, I've had water. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I drink a lot of water.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum everybody and welcome. On behalf of the Brisbane Muslim Fellowship, it's a pleasure to host you all here today. Today our topic, as you can see, is becoming a Muslim without losing my identity. Identity is complex and multi-layered, as we all know, and it's influenced by many things like our family, our community, our values, our culture, our life experiences, and also the roles we have. Islam offers Muslims a comprehensive way of understanding our purpose, ourselves, and the world around us. It influences every aspect of our lives too. And as beautiful as this is, this change also comes with many uncertainties and challenges. As someone who is a born Muslim, I can only imagine the courage it takes to navigate this journey. So today we have the amazing Zarina Chohan, a friend of mine too, and she's going to shed some light on this important topic for us today. And we're so grateful to you, Jazakallah khair, for being here today and taking the time to do this. Zarina is a South African trained psychologist with 14 years of experience. She's worked across a range of settings which has shaped her flexible, creative, and compassionate approach. She's now based in Brisbane. Zarina brings a grounded presence and is passionate about creating safe spaces for healing, reflection, and positive change. So inshallah, she will speak for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then you're welcome to ask questions. So please join me in giving her a warm welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. What a privilege to be here today. I feel really grateful to be invited to be here and to be amongst all of you. I really also, before doing this presentation, I tried to think about what it must feel like, to be in a revert's shoes. And, a couple of words that came up was bravery, real bravery. And I cannot imagine, the shift that this has taken for you on so many different levels. So I might not do justice to it completely, and I'm sure your experiences, will be very telling of that, but I'm going to try my best to see, how we can assist with this transition. The one thing I want to first check in with everyone, if anyone is comfortable to share, does anyone want to share some of the expectations, anything that you would hope to get from this presentation before leaving, something you want to get out of it? Nothing? Okay. If there is something, please let me know, and you can always raise the questions at the end as well. If there are some expectations that come up and you would like to share at any time, just raise your hand, and happy to hear that. I want to make, kind of ensure that I'm also meeting your expectations so that, we can focus on the areas that maybe you guys would like more attention on. So the first thing is identity. When we think of identity, we think of who am I? Who am I? And I think one of the major challenges here is you have the me before becoming Muslim and the me after becoming Muslim. And the biggest challenge here is just the psychological sense that there's a separateness here. There's me before and there's me after. And this already is the first major challenge that comes up psychologically, because what it's doing is it's detaching. It's detaching your past self and the self that you want to move into. And we don't want to create detachment from ourselves. We want connection. We want to evolve. We want to move. We want to transition. We don't want to detach, because once we detach, we're then starting to mask, and you're going to then have negative psychological impact over time. So what we rather need to be doing is we need to be thinking about it. I just want to get to this. We need it to be more something like this. This is what we're looking at. So the past version of me, the version I'd like to become, and this is the space you're in right now. And it's probably a space you're going to be in for a very long time, because we're always renegotiating where we are and who we are in our lives. So really important not to think of it in terms of that separateness, that it's a movement, it's an evolving. It's not me before and me after. It's me transcending into a different space. So when you think of the question, who am I? The reason why it's important, because if you're going to detach from that past self, what's happening is you're detaching from all of this. There's a lot of history. If we have to just look at one thing, for example, your name. Your name has a story behind it. There's a reason why your parents named you this. There could be a lot of emotion. There could be connection with grandparents. There's heritage. There's culture. There's the name people know you as in school, be it positive or negative. So just your name and your family name or surname, who you're known by, just if you decided to choose your name, just that in itself is such a huge shift. And then there's all these other areas. So if you're feeling like I'm needing to move into a new identity, basically what you're saying is you're negating all of this, which is part of who you are. It's part of your history. It's part of what makes you unique. It's part of what's going to be your beauty and what you're going to bring to your community, to yourself, to people around you. So there's many aspects of who am I. There's your name. There's feedback from people. People call you certain things, and that becomes sort of your identity. It might not be who you are, but over years and years and years, if you keep hearing someone say, she's the clumsy one, she's the friendly one, she's the helpful one, he's the jolly one, it tends to kind of become who you are, and you start to feel like that's a part of my identity. Then there's relationships, who we are in relationships, the roles that we play. I'm a mum, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. That also becomes part of our identity. The cultures that we're in, our childhood roles also, I mean, our history of the roles we played as a child. I had someone come for therapy who was the responsible older sister, and she spent her whole life caring for her younger siblings because her mom had to work. She was a single mother, and so she had to sort of take that role, and that transcended into who she felt that was part of who she was. She became a nurse eventually, which aligned with her identity. Again, she's taking care of other people. So again, I think that our childhood roles also have a role on our identity. Also, you might have been a very, let's say you always shared things with a sibling, and you always shared something that you had, and they said, oh, you're a very giving person, and your parents kept saying, you're a giving person, you're a giving person. There are times when you might not have wanted to give something of yours, but because that becomes sort of your identity or what you're known for, you almost start merging into those roles. So these are all important. There's others like our career title, what we do for a living becomes part of identity. A lot of people go through a major crisis when they resign or they retire. There's this huge thing of who am I now? Like, I've been this person, everyone knows me as this person, and what's my role? So all of that shapes our identity. The interesting one is the masked identity, and those are the masks that we have on to please other people. The masks we have on to portray ourselves in a certain way, and that also sometimes merges and becomes part of our identity. And it becomes hard to separate who are we outside of these masks that we've been wearing over the years. So it's such a rich topic, you know. If each of you have to sit down and write a narrative or write a little story about your life from the beginning, the reason, your name, why it was chosen, you know, your relationships, the roles you've played in your home, your personality traits, your achievements, there's going to be pages and pages there, and we don't want to disconnect from that. That's part of what makes you you, and that's part of what makes you unique. And yes, I know there might be trauma there. I know there might be a lot of pain there. I know there's parts of your story that you don't want to remember. There's parts of your story that you'd rather just disconnect from completely, you know. Maybe it wasn't a happy childhood home. Maybe your parents said really nasty things to you your whole life, and maybe you don't want to remember it or have it be part of your story. And so it seems easier to just let's just adjust into a new identity. Let's just forget that and start something new. But there is a way. There is a way, and I think that one of the ways is, you know, you might want to ask, like, how do I do this thing? What if there's so much of negative? What if there's so much of bad in my past or in my identity? Maybe I was bullied. Maybe I was teased. Maybe there's just pain upon pain and trauma. What do I do? Like, how do I then transition into this identity but still hold parts of myself? And that's sort of what we're going to talk about today. So one of the ways we're going to do this is, the first one is reflection. And this is, I know everybody hears this word all the time. I know it's used very loosely. I know that people often avoid reflection, because the most often thing I hear in therapy is, what's the point? Like, what's the point of just talking about all of these things and going nowhere? It's like a waste of time. We're in space. Like, I want solutions. I want to know where to. But there's actually a really good reason for reflection. Like, if you're journaling, or if you're talking to someone, if you're writing about your life story, there's a lot of things that are happening. You're processing, you're sifting through information. As you're going through all this information about your life story, be it good or bad or negative, you're sifting through things. And as you're sifting through things, you're starting to process things. And when you process things, you can then decide, what am I going to keep and what am I going to leave? What am I going to evolve? What am I going to do about this particular part of me that I don't like? But you can't do that if you don't reflect. And reflecting is hard work, because when we look in the mirror and when we reflect, when we read our journal, when we talk to someone, we hear our voice and we realize, oh my goodness, like, there's a very angry part of me, or there's a very envious part of me. Or actually, when I speak, I realize that I'm quite, and it could be something negative, and that's okay. That's what reflection is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be an easy process. So there's reason why reflection is helpful. Initially, it does feel like you might be going nowhere, but you've got to trust the process. And what happens next is, when you reflect, you become self-aware. So think about a machine. Think about, you buy this coffee machine, and this is the state-of-the-art coffee machine. You have never seen anything like this before. It's digital. It has about 9 or 10 different buttons. It has symbols. It has sounds. But you do not have a manual. You've never used it before, and you bring this machine home. And you unbox it, and you've got friends over, and they say, right, let's have a cappuccino, please. Just imagine how you're going to feel using that machine. And now think about the very same machine, but what you're doing is you've researched it before. Maybe you've watched a friend use it. Maybe you've read or watched 3 Google videos about how this works. Now you're unboxing it, and your friend then says, make a cappuccino. And think about how you're going to feel then. So what happens when you have knowledge? You have power. When you have knowledge, you have a better sense of confidence. You have a sense of more control within yourself. So what we're talking about here is, when you're doing it with yourself, the more you know about yourself, when you reflect, the more you have this information. I can be envious. I can be a bit stingy with my money sometimes. I can be a little bit angry. I'm a very warm-hearted person. So you've got all this information. What do I do with all of it? You're processing it, you're sifting it, and then it becomes self-awareness. So what happens now is, you have all this information. You can better navigate through life. You can control yourself better. So now, all of a sudden, your friend says to you, let's go to a party. Or getting invited to a party, let's go. And you've been to these parties before. And you know what it's going to bring out in you. Not what happens at the party, but what does it bring out in you. And if you know, oh my goodness, being around these people brings out this in me, brings out that in me, brings out this in me, you can then control it. You can then say, well, I'm going to not do this. Or I'm going to say, I can't make it. Or I'm going to say, I'd love to spend time with you, but I'm not going to attend the party. Let's rather meet tomorrow for breakfast. So you can control yourself better. It's the same thing with your anger. If you can feel that I'm actually starting to dip into that feeling envy, or I'm feeling very angry, you can then start shifting back and say, I need to take a step from this. Whereas if you don't have that, you can't control your behavior. You don't have any control. You feel like your emotions, your behavior is taking control of you. You feel very out of control. And that's when you say, I don't know why I behaved that way. I don't know why I keep going there, even though I know it's not good for me. That's because maybe there's a sense of not wanting to reflect. And then the last step is accountability. And this is the hard part as well. Because I think when you look at yourself, when you look in the mirror, you will find things, and you will find things from your past that you don't like. It's things that you've behaved, or you did, or that happened to you. But if you can take accountability for it, it's going to hurt, it's going to be painful, it's not going to be easy, but you can then make changes. You can then say, how can I avoid this from happening again? How can I move into a space where I can use that experience for something good? Maybe you could use it to help the generation going forward, because you've been there and you know what it's like. But you cannot do that, you cannot go on that journey if you haven't done the work yourself. So that's the reason why reflection is important. That's the reason why awareness becomes important. And so if we want to tie this now back into our identity, we're talking about moving into that space. The reason why this becomes important is because if you want to move into that space, there needs to be some sense of accountability, reflection, self-awareness, so that you can move into a space of evolving into who am I now? What parts of me am I taking with me? What parts of me am I growing on? What parts of me do I want to rather not optimize on? Do I want to slowly not feed so it becomes sort of a dormant part? And I say dormant, not dead, because we have parts of us that are always there. Certain people, certain things will trigger those parts in us. So we don't actually, I don't think they ever die, but I think they can become dormant if you are not practicing on them, giving them too much of attention, and years have passed and you've moved past it. It really becomes a thing of the past. It's not your present anymore. So it's a process and it takes a bit of time. Are there any questions up until here? Does anyone have any questions or things they want to clarify? Yeah.
I was just thinking, how does this relate to when you become Muslim? Because obviously when you become Muslim, your accountability for what happens before is kind of diminished.
How does?
I'm wondering how this relates to becoming Muslim, because obviously when you become Muslim, your accountability is kind of diminished. Or some people say you're not accountable for what you did before. Would you say
You're not accountable for?
Your deeds.
Or your deeds from before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say you should still like take accountability for them and sit in that reflection?
Yeah. So accountability is just, I think it's about owning your actions. It's owning it in terms of saying that was part of my past.
Okay.
Maybe I was a person who was very, maybe you bullied other people. Yes, I was a bully. I was.
Yeah.
And once you say that, you can say, what was happening for me at the time that I was bullying other people at school?
Yeah.
Okay, I was angry at home, I needed an outlet. You try to understand that. And we'll talk about compassion as well, self-compassion. So you're taking accountability for it, and what you could do is you could use that, because you know what it's like to be in the mindset of a bully. And if you do that, you could help other people going forward. You could help yourself going forward. Say, there is this part of me that when I'm triggered or when I feel very angry, I tend to bully other people, or I tend to dominate other people. It might never go away. You might find that there may be times when you are triggered into that space again, but you can control it better to say, there's something about this person, or when I'm in this environment with these people, I tend to get activated into that bully in me. And Allah doesn't like that. That's not what our religion teaches. We don't want to harm and hurt other people. So I need to think about, how can I not get myself into that space, or how do I maybe detach myself from that space a little so that I don't become that person. So do you see how the accountability kind of helps you to grow, rather than it's about bring forward your books of good deeds and bad deeds? It's more around, I need to be accountable with myself so that I can grow. So you use it as a tool to help you evolve and to become a better person. And it aligns beautifully psychologically and with Islam. We'll speak about it as we go further, that actually it all just sort of syncs together. There's a way of syncing it quite nicely. But the one thing now I think we're going a little deeper, but the one thing that then holds people back from accountability and from doing this, and that's why people say, I don't want to self-reflect, this is a waste of time, this is not something. It's also a defense mechanism. Like, people don't want to feel their feelings. You don't want to go through it because it's hard work, but you don't want to feel your feelings. And the main feeling, there's many others, right? But the main feeling that I find in therapy, we sometimes could spend sessions and sessions and sessions breaking through, is this feeling of feeling guilty. Guilt. My goodness, guilt is a big one, and people are stuck in this feeling of guilt. It takes so long to work through this because guilt again is loaded. Now, I'm trying not to overload you with too much of information, but I think the guilt is an emotion that sometimes, I remember my supervisor used to tell me that guilt is a waste of time emotion. And he wasn't a Muslim, he wasn't it wasn't from a spirit, but he said it's a waste of time emotion. It gets you nowhere. It debilitates you. If you feel guilty about something, so think of the example of a child dropping a glass of water, and you say, you're bad, you're clumsy, you're terrible, you always do this. Like, you know, get into your room. That child doesn't want to carry another glass again or bring one to you. The next time you say, please bring me a glass of water, what does the child say? Like, why should I even try? Why should I even give this a go? Like, I'm useless at this already. But if a child drops the glass of water and you say to them, you know, mistakes happen. Let's sit and think about what do you think could have happened here? Maybe your hands were a bit slippery, or perhaps you were running and walking. You know, there's a bit of a different conversation there. Mistakes happen to everyone. Let's clean that up together. It's okay, we'll try next time. Let's have a round two. Very different. The child wants to try. They want to get better. It's the same thing with ourselves. Guilt, really, it just debilitates you. It doesn't make you want to move forward. It keeps you stuck, and in an awful way. And there's many reasons why guilt is there, and sometimes it's rooted as well in the past. But what it brings is the sense of I am wrong. It's anxious, it's punishing, I don't deserve good. I shouldn't go out, I shouldn't eat. You know, sometimes people won't eat when something's happened. It's like a form of self-punishment. You know, I had an argument with my sister, and now I'm not eating for the rest of the day because I was terrible. Why did I say that to her? I'm a horrible person. So it debilitates you. It also distorts a lot of things. And a lot of times you'll find that your guilt is not based in evidence. A lot of times it's not based, like if you said, I'm a horrible sister. How could I have said that to her? How could I have hung up the phone on her? And then you punish yourself, you don't eat anything. Or where's the evidence that you're a horrible sister? You know, if you had to sit down and take the time and write down, what are all the things when I phoned her, I checked in on her, she was going through a bad time, I supported her, you know, we go on holidays together. So you've got all these things, and then maybe you've had this one little argument. So if you look at the evidence, does it really suffice for you saying, you know? So I think it's important to look at this and say, you know, guilt is gonna debilitate me. I need to have a more self-compassionate way of looking at myself, at my past, and at the way that I view myself in the conversations I'm having with myself. So it also fuels cycles of anxiety, relational insecurity. I am wrong, I am bad. So the difference here as well is with the guilt is it's I am bad, I am wrong. Now think about what we spoke about with identity. As soon as you say I am, what are you doing? You're immediately pairing that to your identity. That becomes who you are. I'm a bad person. That's your identity now. So what's the point? What's the point of trying? What's the point of doing anything good? Because now that's who you are. You're saying I'm a bad person, rather than saying the way I treated that conversation could have been done better. I acted out of anger. I should have, you know, thought about it before doing that. Let me phone and apologize. Let me check in on her the next day and take accountability for my behavior. So very, very different. So that's the difference. So now there's a thing called spiritual guilt as well. And spiritual guilt is very different, and it's what we're speaking about now. It actually merges beautifully with the psychological concept of cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy works on changing the way that you think. It speaks about, like you say, I am bad, but you say my behavior was bad. So what you're doing is you're separating it from identity to a behavior. A behavior can be changed. Your identity feels more like it's inbuilt, right? So when you think of cognitive behavioral therapy, and you think of Islam and spiritual guilt, it kind of works the same way. It's rephrasing it, like Allah is always forgiving. You know, if Allah can forgive you, you can forgive others. It's a softer, gentler way of moving towards growth, not of punishment, not of stuckness, but growth. There's plenty that we can go into there, but I think it's really just thinking about it as, you know, and I think the example here of I did something wrong versus I am wrong. So think about it as spiritual guilt moves you towards growth and evolving. I'll give you some examples as we go along. So here's some examples. The first one, I'm wrong for feeling uncomfortable. Maybe I'm judging people. a different way of thinking about it. My discomfort is a sign of growth. I'm a bad friend, they will think I'm abandoning them. Another way of thinking about it is I can love people while choosing spaces that support my iman. I am ashamed of my past. You could rather say my past has shaped me. I can honor it while evolving into who Allah is guiding me to become. Allah brought me to Islam at the perfect time. My past is part of His plan and a part of my story. I'm failing, I'm moving backwards. Maybe something like I've slipped, but I'm learning. Allah sees my effort and my sincerity. Very different ways. You're saying very similar things, but the way that you say it, the one is going to move you towards growth, and the other is going to keep you feeling stuck and debilitated. So this aligns with cognitive behavioral therapy as well, with psychology. So restructuring the way that we think in order to move towards a place of, in psychology they will call it self-love and self-acceptance. And I think in Islam we can merge that and say, well, it's what Allah has chosen for us, that our pasts are part of what Allah has chosen for us, and there's something in it that we can take from it. There is something in it that you can, even the traumas. In fact, you will find that with the traumas you've been through, you will find that there's a lot that you can pull out from there and move forward, move into more positive spaces. So another thing, and I think this is just towards summing it up, is I think the unanimity of converting or reverting is actually something, I was thinking about it as a psychologist now, out of the Muslim mindset into a psychologist, and I thought if someone came to me and said that, look, I've reverted, I've converted to any religion, the first thing I think about is identity, and then I think of loss. The word that comes to me as a psychologist is loss. Like I think to myself, my goodness, there's loss of possibly friends and families, maybe relationships, maybe a name, maybe a sense of belonging. And belongings can be, I remember having someone in therapy saying to me they were part of a motorcycle club, and she said that was the best time of her life because she felt like she belonged somewhere. And then she had a medical illness where she couldn't then get onto a bike, and she said, I loved motorbiking, I loved the adrenaline, but the community and the loss of the support was the biggest loss. She went into quite a deep depression. And so there's loss on many levels. Your sense of belonging, your lifestyle, things that places you used to love to eat at, maybe that could also be a loss. This version, I used to love going there, and I used to love having a sundowner and have sunset or whatever it is, and now it feels like now that's all gone. There's even the loss of what you would have liked for your future. So now you're rechanging your future ambitions and your goals. Maybe you had this fantasy of you would be with this particular person and you would be doing this and that, and now it changes completely. So the loss of that fantasy of what your future was going to be. So there's so much of loss here, but there's also huge adjustment. So we need to bear in mind that when you're going through this, you need to be compassionate. You need to be compassionate and kind to yourself. This is not like something that just changes overnight. It's going to take time. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to your story. Be kind on the days that you're feeling really sad and you feel like, I miss that part of my life, or I miss that, socializing with my friends, or I miss, Saturday night partying, whatever it might be. I miss it. And it's okay. It's okay that you do. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything about the person that it's just acknowledge that there's a loss there. There's a change in your life. And so loss comes with that. But alhamdulillah, after I did that, I thought, well, as a Muslim psychologist, I think, well, there's also a lot that you've gained. There's a lot that you gain. And you know what's interesting is I actually went into academic articles and I looked at, my search was, help me find academic articles that are grounded in research around reverts and loss and psychological impact of it on them. And what had come up was there was actually more gains than losses. It was hard to find too many. It it was interesting that everything was around. They actually found a better sense of community, more belonging, a sense of identity. So alhamdulillah, there was more gains than losses. There wasn't much to find on it. So with the losses come the gains. So I'm gonna connect some of these to psychological principles, right? So for example, prayer. Your prayer, think of it as your meditation. Think of it as your 5 minutes of meditation or yoga a day. It helps you connect with yourself, connect with Allah. It brings you into a space of self-regulation. Also, when your forehead touches the floor, do you know that the limbic part of your brain doesn't work when your forehead... The limbic part of your brain is the part that thinks all the time. You're analyzing all the time. When that forehead touches the ground, that part doesn't work for that period of time. Which is great because you're in a state of meditation, you're in a state of relaxation. So if you look at it in that way, it can fit some of already the things that you might feel are helpful in life. The other one is fasting, you gain from that. It's the detox of the soul, detox of the body. So you're gaining that, a sense of community, a sense of belonging. The spaces that you're in, the spaces that you get invited into. Take it up, go for it, You might not always feel like you know what's happening, or it might not feel like it's up your alley, but if it means you're going to sit with a group of people that are happy to have you there and the space is open and welcome for all, take opportunity to feel the sense of belonging and the sense of connection. And then practicing forgiveness, gratitude, patience. That's all aligning with teachings of Islam, but it's also part of psychology. We do a lot of forgiveness of parents, forgiveness of the person the perpetrator when you were a victim. We work towards feelings of forgiveness, so psychologically it aligns as well with Islamic principles. Yeah, so I think growth happens in layers, not in leaps. It takes time. And I can tell all of you here, I think that you all were very, very brave. You all are very brave, and everyone's on their journey, every Muslim, and I think there's something that connects you with every other Muslim. Besides everything else, there's one thing, and I think that everyone is trying, but nobody knows and has knowledge of everything. We all try, we're all on our journeys. We all are trying to better tajweed or memorize a part of the Quran or be better at the way that we pray Salah or even just be better people. We are all trying. We're constantly going for, things to try and better ourselves. So it's not something that's, you feel shameful about. It's something that's, part of, it's going to be our lifelong journey. I don't think it's ever going to end. So I think the sooner you accept that you're never going to know everything. You're never going to feel like you're on top of everything. Your goals are yours, work on them realistically, but accept that it's really just a process. And look at where you were 3 months ago and where you are now, and that's your comparison, not where your friend is or where the person who's presenting is or where that person. Look at where you were 3 months, and maybe there's little things that you've shifted and changed, and those are big deal. There's a big deal in your life. So I think acknowledge that as well. Yeah, I think that's it for me. I know that was a lot of information to digest. I'd like to sort of open up now to some maybe questions that anyone has, or any reflections, things that you maybe want to share about yourself or your story, or something that maybe synchronized or didn't synchronize with you in this talk.
What would be the most effective way of reflecting apart from just journaling?
I think it's very personal, depending on what you like. Some people hate writing, so they hate journaling. But I think you can use a dictaphone. You can talk and you can record. You can go to therapy. You can speak to Allah in your du'as. You can speak to a confidant or a friend. I think AI can be very helpful as well, where you could speak to AI and ask AI to, if you want, write it for you or summarize it for you, or even, give you you could use a very creative way. The important thing about reflecting is not just your writing, but it's about going back and reading it, and that's when the reflection really happens. So you write and you write and you write, and then 3 months later you look back and you're like, oh my goodness, like, you know, and there's funny things that people often say, like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize I make such a big deal out of small things. Or someone might say, you know, I keep repeating this that I feel like nobody's hearing me, I feel like nobody understands me. That's like repeated in my journal like 40 times. That is something I need to pay attention to. So I think it's more the going back to it at some point. It doesn't have to be immediately, but going back to it at some point, and then that's where you're going to pick up certain things about yourself afterwards. There's also a couple of apps that you can use. This app is not really, there's one called Daylio, D-A-Y-L-I-O, and there's a few others where it's a tracking device, right? Where every single time you feel something, you put your emotion in there. So you could add photographs in it to like correspond with it. You could add more details, or you just write a feeling word. And what happens is over time, it tracks your emotions. So I had once this lady, she was pretty OCD, she's type A personality, so she took this to another level, right? I just said to her, track your emotions, and she found this app, so I learned from her. She found this app and she said, I found this app, Delio, and I started, it's free, and so she started tracking. She comes 3 weeks later and she goes, oh my goodness, this thing gave me a whole chart of all my trackings. I realized I have so much of sad in me. I'm such a sad person, but I thought I was happy, like I'm always just happy. And so it was an aha moment for her, that she picked up that, because every time she clicked, she just obviously said, I feel this, you know, without overthinking it. And it picked up the theme. So you can use technology in a very creative way as well. So apps can help too. Mood logging, you get books, I think, as well, in many stores where it's nicely put into little graphs, and you write the day, and then you can put in your mood, you can put in numbers 0 to 10 where you're at, and I think all that is kind of just helping you.
Any apps you recommend?
You know, I'm terrible with technology. Let me just tell you, I'm terrible. Even just getting this presentation onto slides. I am very old-fashioned. I'm trained in that time, so I'm still pen and paper. But the Daylio is one, I think a lot of
What
them...
is it, sorry?
Daylio. D-A-Y-L-I-O.
D-A-Y-L-I-O.
L-I-O. Yes. And I'm sure there's a few more if you look at mood tracking, reflecting, journaling, you'll find plenty. Yeah. I usually find I reflect a lot through dua, I reflect through journaling. Also, you know, I think listening to your own thoughts as well can be very helpful. If there's a lot of painful things, you know, and there's a counselor, there's a friend that you feel safe with, or a therapist, that also can be helpful if you're afraid that you're going to go into a very dark place. But I think just start off with very basic. Just very basic reflection. How's my day going? How am I feeling today? What are some of the conflicts I'm having within myself? What do I figure out? And the stuff you don't like, write it in there. Write the messy stuff.
I think it's good you focus on like okay guilt and like negative guilt, because I think, you know, as a convert sometimes we can go a lot into accountability about past stuff, and we can get into negative, people can get into this negative space where they're like, I'm awful, I'm this, I'm that, and it's good to have a differentiation between guilt that helps you grow and guilt that puts you in a negative place. And I think it was good that you acknowledged that there are those different types of guilt, and you don't want to be completely guilt ridden, because that can be really detrimental for you going forward. It can actually stop you from doing your obligations because you feel so bad. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you sometimes feel a little stuck sometimes as well with the guilt, or do you feel like it can bring you down a little?
In the past, I did, but I feel like I've done a lot of work now with trying to be more compassionate, more kind to myself and the people, and that's helped me to come out of that place.
Okay.
But yeah, I used to focus a lot on accountability. And so I think it's good that you did, you know, like growth guilt, because you said you had the spiritual guilt and the, I can't remember the type of guilt, but there's like saying there's different types in that, and you sort of catch yourself when you're going into that really negative guilt, which isn't productive for your growth. It's just kind of holding you back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's one to take note of, you know.
Yeah.
The conversations we have with ourselves
Yeah.
often keep us from growing the most. Sometimes they're not even our own voices, they're voices of people from our past that have repeatedly said things that were, very negative. Anyone else?
This is a big one for converts or regrets. It's your relationship with your family after you're reverted. And how do you manage your emotions and behaviour when you're in a situation where there's, I suppose, animosity, or where your family doesn't like what you've become a Muslim?
Okay.
So how do you deal with your emotions and behaviour when you're with your family?
Okay. And in that situation, does the family still, is there rejection of you, or is there still an acceptance of you but just rejection of your beliefs?
I think families respond in different ways. So, for example, a family with very strong belief in another faith, that's Christianity or perhaps Judaism, whatever, I think there can be a big rejection happening there. But in the Australian context, where sort of happy-go-lucky and there's not a great belief in faith, about 80%. Like, I think a lot of people believe there's a higher power, but they don't really follow a faith. That actually might be an easier situation. But unless they vote for Paul Hanson, maybe.
You actually raise a very important question. It was something I thought about discussing as well, and I think very
How do you
important
approach
question.
that? How do you deal with it?
It's a good question. I think the first thing
Because
is
it's a really big one for
relationships, for family. I think the first thing is an acceptance that people are entitled to have their opinion, and I think the first thing is to say to kind of accept that an acceptance that they're not accepting your belief, or that they're not in alignment with it. And I think as soon as you do that, there's less of that push-pull kind of energy, so you can restore your energy into what's meaningful, right? Because you are already going through so much, you are making so many changes in so many ways, right? You've made up your mind already. So I think that when you accept that people are not going to be okay with this, people that I love are not going to be okay with this, I think you're already saving yourself a lot of the energy of that push-pull dynamic. So when someone says to you something like, are you sure you want to do this? Or, our way was, or, something that they might say, you can respond and say, I really get where you're coming from. I get that this is hard for you, Mom. I get this is hard for you, Dad, that I made this decision. And I can see it's really hard for you. And if they're willing to take it, you could say, I hope you're getting support from your friends for it, or at some point I hope that I can support you through this, but right now it's quite a journey for me. So I think just acknowledging it without push-pull or having to convince. I think it's so hard when you're having to convince someone of the decisions you're making in your life. So, and you want to still remain respectful, you want to still remain kind, you still want to have a relationship with them. And I think that's important, is keep asking yourself, what is it that I want still? Even if your parent doesn't agree or choose or like what you've chosen, if you still want a relationship with them, keep that as your goal. I would still like to have a relationship with them. So when they bring up and say, but tell me, why did you do this? Like, what got you? You shouldn't have done this. You could immediately shift the topic and say, Mom, maybe we could talk about this another day, but today I really wanted to spoil you for breakfast. Tell me more about what you did this week, or tell me how did you make that cake or whatever. So what you're doing is you're keeping your goal on, I want to have a relationship with you. I'm not here to argue with you, I'm not here to convince you. I just want to have a relationship with you. And you could keep repeating that to say, same with your friends, your friendship is still important to me. I'm sorry, I can't make that function, but your relationship is still important to me. Please come over to my place afterwards for a cup of tea. Or I've got it in my diary that we're going to be meeting next week Saturday. I'm sorry I can't make it. So you maintaining that space of, I still want to keep relationship with you. If they're good for you and you like them and you want them to be part of your life, then that's your goal. And you don't have to be the same and the same person to keep, maintain a relationship with someone. And so I think that's the message you keep sending across to them. Or if they're having dinners at their house and you always went for dinners and there was always alcohol there, and maybe you really enjoyed it before and you don't want, or maybe you do want to go but you feel you might get tempted, or you choose not to go. Again, tell your friend, I'd love to spend time with you. Let's have the next dinner at my place, and maybe at your place you don't have the alcohol, but you're still having her over, you're still having the dinner, you know. So I think it's just about keeping in sync with what your goal is. It's the relationship with people you want to keep. It's not the content. And we can relate with anyone because we're all human beings. So there's something you can relate with people on. And it doesn't have to be religion, values, morals. Doesn't have to be about that. And I think keeping it simpler, especially in the beginning, is probably easier. And as you become more grounded in yourself, and as you work through all your anxiety and all this kind of transition, it might be easier to delve into the deeper conversations with them.
I had a question. So you mentioned before, like, certain people bring out, like, a specific person, and, like, they might be, like, thinking that you're that person.
Yeah.
And what would you, like, recommend, like, if that's your parents, and, like, you have to live with them and stuff like that?
Yeah.
How does that?
So if you asking if your parents bring out like the worst in you, and you're staying with them, is it? And I suppose it depends if it's at all the time or sometimes. Yeah. So I think then I think your journey of self-reflection becomes important. It's layered here because are your parents triggering, or the parents triggering that part in you because of their personalities or who they are? Is this something they're saying? So I think that would take a little bit more unpacking as to how to deal with maybe the relationship dynamic. Yeah. But sometimes I think keeping a bit of the distance doesn't have to be a physical distance, it can be an emotional distance. So if you're in a house with someone, you might have to maintain emotional distance, which is not getting too involved in conversations that are going to trigger you. So, if your mom says something and you respond and you know this is a topic where it's going to bring out the worst in you and you're going to start behaving in a way that you don't like, sometimes it's better to just either comply or to step out of it emotionally and just say, okay, I hear you, and not get too engaged in it, because you're protecting yourself from maybe getting into more sin by being rude or disrespectful or screaming, or the main thing is you want to keep truth and intact within yourself, so that you can leave there feeling like, okay, I didn't lose myself in this, I don't have something to repent after this, and that's what and it's hard when you're living with someone. So having spaces outside that are supportive, loving, caring, and that help you be closer to that person you are is very important. So making space for that. If you're living in a home that might be a little toxic or that might be hard, having spaces outside of that to fill your cup, to nurture you, becomes very important.
First of all, I just wanted to thank you for the wonderful presentation. It's given me a lot to reflect on. Something that it brought up for me personally was I do struggle with perfectionism. So the idea of being in the middle and having the after, the process of becoming a Muslim or like a good Muslim, for me it's how do I hold on to like Muslim role models as inspiration versus kind of an unreachable goal or something to compare myself towards.
Okay. Do you often find that you have goals around perfectionism, and you would like to have more of the sort of in-betweener or the more balanced?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how do I kind of be kind and compassionate to where I am now,
Yeah.
and at the same time have goals for how I want to be in the future?
Yeah. So I think that that is really about the way that you're going to write down your goals, and the way that you're going to your goals probably need to align more with yourself than with external. And so if it's within yourself, let's say your goal is I'd like to be more constant with my salah. So instead of having maybe 20 or 30 different goals, you know, or maybe you have plenty, but I think it's choosing one and you say, right, I'd like to be more consistent with my salah. So that's your one goal. And within that you can say, what would for me mean that I'm at my perfect level there? You know, and for somebody else, so I think for each thing you've got to ask yourself, where is my sense of that's where I'm at my best. So for example, like I've got kids, right? So I've got kids and my life is really busy from time to time. And I've also got my goals in terms of my own spirituality. And so there are times when I make certain things and I can't. And so I've got to be realistic and say, I would like to reach this. I would like to, you know, get there. But then when I think, well, for where I'm at and what everything's going on in my life right now, I'm probably the best I'm going to get, even if I put in just 100% is there. So I'm going to have to go there. Then I still want to give myself some room for being human. So I might go a little lower, you know, or you reach there and you say, well, I didn't get there, but I got. So I think you've got to take into consideration where you're at in your journey. And then once you reach that goal, you go the next, and you go the next, and you go the next. So I think it really needs to be personalized. Your goals need to be personalized to you. Your role models, personal to you. Personal to where you're at in your life. So you might say, I'm studying at the moment, and maybe I've got responsibility, and I'm working a part-time job, and I might not be able to make it to every single halaqah on a Sunday, but I could get the recordings and I could do it on a Tuesday evening. But I'm setting the intention that I want to at least attend 70% of them. 100% is my aim, but 70% I'll get there. You know, so if you reach that 70%, you're perfect, because that's the perfectionism in you is, I want to complete that at my best. And so if you set it at 70 and you get to 70 and you tick that box, you've just, you know, worked within your personality. So you don't need to change your personality, you just need to adjust it to fit, and such that you are still moving. And the goals are really important, something that's so important, little small realistic goals, and just, you know, when you reach them, tick them off and you can keep going. Yes. Does it answer it? Or?
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Are there any other questions? If not, the food's arrived. I hope you're hungry. Thank you very much, Zarina. It's very interesting and very helpful. We've recently formed